You're right.
Recording before we read it?
Yes.
Okay. This is the June 18th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting. I'll call to order. Let's have a roll call, please.
Trustee Hallwax, trustee Mealopoulos,
Here.
trustee Underdog.
Here.
Trustee Rosenblatt.
Yeah.
Trustee Rubin.
Here.
Trustee Scott.
Here.
President Rowland.
Here.
There's that. That is. Okay, here we go.
Giving us a second. So we're not live streaming this meeting tonight, but the video recording will be available on the village YouTube channel. Pursuant to the village board's recently adopted public comment rule, because the village board regular meeting is scheduled for immediately after this meeting, public comment on non-agenda items will occur only during the village board meeting at 7 o'clock. If you have a comment on an agenda item that is included on tonight's committee of the whole agenda, I'll ask that you make those comments when we reach that item on the agenda. At the appropriate time, all comments related to agenda items are limited to 3 minutes, and I'll notify the speaker when the 3 minutes are in. First item on our committee of the whole agenda is update and discussion of streetscape parking and the streetscape parking and study process. I'll ask our Development Services Director, Taylor Baxter, and our consultants. Let's start with Taylor.
Thank you, President Rowan. This is a follow-up to the open house that we had on June 2nd at Rangers Theater, where we presented some draft concepts for a variety of streetscape options for central business.
October is often a really good month to collect data because it is a good baseline information. This rainbow pattern to understand the
Go deeper into the issues surrounding streetscape and we asked people to just also on street, but it also calms traffic, and now we have those cars coming out and making learning and as far as parking impacts, overall, going from a van to a parallel parking system, we would lose 11 spaces, but we would be denying that in closing this access. So we will be net change. And then the next one, the last one.
Back to. Very nice.
Thank you. Okay, so this one is, would be the most change, and this is what we call the max concept. In this case, we would keep our diagonal parking spaces on both sides of the street, but instead of a two-lane roadway, this would be a one-way system. And so a one-way drive lane diagonal on each side, that also gets us about a similar size sidewalk, in this case, a 17 sidewalk, which will allow us to have outdoor seating and dining. Okay, so that would look something like this, and so we anticipate a one-way southbound driveway down Vernon with diagonal on each side, and then we have our wide 17-foot wide sidewalks. In this case, we would have no change to on-street parking. We add 9 spaces to the village court parking lot, so this is the net gain. I will say that anytime that we do radical changes to streets like this, we would recommend some further traffic modeling, just to see how that's behaving. You think that there would be some modifications that might even happen here at Park Avenue. So one of the things that we asked at the last public meeting, and this is the last page in your packet. Was we asked folks to help us think through what was preferred, the min, the mid, the max, and you're welcome to make notes on it, but that is something else that we're gonna for your feedback at the end of the meeting. And you can see what folks voted on here. People really didn't feel the min was perfect, but we did get 3 votes for the mid concept and 5 for the max. I will say we only had about 20 votes come to the. So one of the other questions that we want to pose to you is, do we think that additional public outreach must be something we can consider? So these are the 3 different alternatives for Vernon, and then I'm going to move to some of the placemaking stuff, the products and materials. So one in green, this is a diagram that is included in the comprehensive plan. This is a placeholder to demonstrate how the line green enhanced to provide spaces for people to gather, sit outside, protect trees. And so we've offered some photographs of different types of functions that could happen at the site, and people voted on them. It wasn't to say that it would be a conforming space that looks just like that, but there's the functionality of having a performance area. So performance area, terrace seating, tables and chairs, casual seating like hammocks, open lawn, nature play, shelters and swings are all things that are offered. Things that were ranked highest were the open lawn, the terrace seating got a lot of votes, and the shade shelter. So if you all have thoughts, we would be interested to hear that. And then we asked folks to help us think through what existing streetscape materials and products should be protected and reused. And so you can see how things are here. And then we asked about new streetscape materials and products. So these were clustered into types. So at the top were a variety of different types of seats. The one at the top left is a bench topper that's mounted to the limestone wall. That could be something that gets integrated with the limestone walls that are downtown today. We looked at a variety of furniture products. Ironically, the one that has the most votes is called the Glencoe product that comes out of protected bollards. These would be in places at the intersections to provide separation from pedestrians and automobiles. We looked at plantings. We heard a lot about plantings in the outreach that the plantings and planters refreshing, so people voted that would make plantings they'd like to see. Additional amenities, not got a lot of votes in terms of water features, fireplaces, or sitting benches. Decorative lighting, we do get a lot of votes, about undermounted bench lighting, those are somewhat similar to the types of things that we see on reports. And so, as far as where we're at in our process, we are scoped out for tonight to get feedback and then to go develop the draft streetscape conversion plan before going back to the village board, but we did want to take this time to get your feedback and also thinking about outreach, how important the project is, and that we got great feedback, but that it was limited in the number of people that were meeting. Would we like to consider having additional outreach? It could be in the form of an online survey. It could be these same materials put online so that it's sort of consistent. So that is the first question. I'll just kind of take a pause there to your thoughts.
But virtually my position. I mean, Meadows got no votes, but based on my experience, the village gets the most likely result because we're supposed to improve this place and not change it. And that's the way everything works. Let me ask you, Tom, a question about the maximum, which is one-way street. If we're going to do that, we're going to have to plot it out. You can think about it. I get the point, but I could also ask you, the middle course with the parallel parking question. A parallel parking, a little bit like Driver's Ed movie, it's a little more exciting on a parallel parking. How much does that speed up the street operation? When somebody pulls into a diamond spot, they pull in. There's generally no exploding. With the parallel parking spot, maybe not so much. How much do we have to think about?
I'm going to start briefly, probably, like more to say, but I think that those are really big comments and questions, and I was trying to get back to the line, so that one thing that we've seen out there today, but because the travel lanes are so wide, we have people that are making left turns instead of basically on the other side of the street, when people left turns. And so we are aiming to make this more pedestrian friendly in the way of reducing travel lanes. And also, I didn't really talk about it, but enhancing the intersections, these could be grades, so that it also slows traffic. So that you're coming along from north, for instance, when you get to the intersection part, the pavement would raise up a little bit, you would have a little bit of texture because the pavement would change. Either all of these things together force folks to drive slower, which is what we want in the corridor like this. So from the get-go, they will be moving through the corridor and slower. Not having that big wide space to kind of speed through. I think having slower traffic is going to help give people pause so that people make their parallel space parking, but do you want to answer that?
I would say two things. One, I think it's okay with the slow traffic a little bit. Because that's sort of the goal of this program, particularly on it's okay if someone has to wait and allow. No parking has to come. And these aren't spaces like we see in the city. These are 24 feet. They're fairly easy to pull into. Several of them really just, if you're in the first spot, you just pull in and you go straight first. So I'm going to just send it along.
Let me ask a second question. In the pictures, it showed sort of bumping out towards the stairs. Which created bigger sidewalk space, maybe space for chairs, restaurant stuff. That does not actually match the current configuration for our restaurants. And so not just permanent, of course. Restaurants may come and go, but you sort of have to think about accommodating the restaurant. So, and I don't know if you thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that we're providing more spaces for people to congregate together. It doesn't necessarily have to be a dining. Seating, planters and places for people together, not really in the restaurant. We heard some good feedback from past projects when people are just appreciative of having an outdoor space. They don't have to patronize a business to use this public space. In the future, yeah, you never know. I mean, this is setting up infrastructure for maybe in the future somebody does want to occupy that.
Yeah. Very successful operation. We're gonna have right now. They have a state called street. It's plan it's gonna go away. And there are single board street and guest street system. Steve. But I think it's going away. But my guess, the restaurant would like some accommodation, maybe not all year with street. But okay, your plans by the way for bump outs for restaurants. Some of the like they have.
Yeah, in front of you.
And I think probably if
Yes, we focus on widening the sidewalk and widening the bump out at the intersection only, but we can certainly look at just having individual bump outs next to businesses, but I think it does start to become challenging for a little bit because we don't know the future of all the businesses. You know, in Wilmette, the bump outs are primarily at the intersection corners where you can get the most space. If you think about the size of a parking space and bumping it out, we run out of room real quick. So thank you so much.
I have a question. Keep research. Temple Court parking lot is not generally parking for everyone. And so when I see a number that says, oh, you've hit 85%, I think at first it was like, all right, granted, some of the spaces maybe further away, but then I thought, oh yeah, Temple parking lot, is that maxed out? Is the, is it sort of like the 85% is really the other spaces, the 15% of the other spaces? How's that like?
Really? So.
It's about 15% of the park.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, it's employees, it's essentially full.
It is generally maxed out.
Over 90%. But I think it's important. Yeah. That doesn't. Because we have to move people into it, then we have to then release stuff out, so it's all part of our.
Sure.
Before we get into this too much, I want to remind everyone of my past. I served as a parking adjudicator for the village. About right before Phil joined the organization, 12 years ago, about. Did that for about a year, and I have to say it was very unpleasant. But I did want to mention the problem people or problem areas we have. Hair salons, often 2 hours is not enough time for that. Those visitors, and managing that can be a bit of a problem. I also had a number of employees, people who's working parking there, even with the special provisions we made for them to park in different parts of places. And then the third major area with my violation investigation for real estate. Back and forth. I don't know how that exactly fits into things, but I wanted to see what we could do to accommodate these groups. I think some of it relates more to management concerns and action. The other thing I wanted to mention is, for me, safety trumps everything. I want to make sure with the movement in city planning now, to really open up corners and sight lines. And let's see what we can do to make that safer. And that means we need to be very careful about placement or anything in that site plan, including signage and all that. Related to that, many communities are investigating actually changing pavement color and texture in the intersections. That might be worth taking a look at as well. Finally, I want to mention is that we were in the throes of talking to the library about an expansion. That could very well have an impact on our parking as well. Not only because we have larger space, but also planning the auditorium, multi-use auditorium for that. And that would certainly add to certain kinds of parking domains. Again, that might be able to be managed to some extent in how we manage our company, but something that I think is really take a look at and understand what that possibility is. There needs to be a build on that, and it's not something that's going to happen right away. But I wanted to make sure that we look at that as well. And the other thing that I know drives our police force crazy is the left turn in spaces with the slanted parking. I don't know what we could do about that. There's been some attempts in the past from signs in the street, some other ways, but we have some suggestions as how we can deal with that. Crossing the center would be most efficient.
Thank you. And I think for me, at least, the best way to pivot left turns into the parking spaces is to not make the road widening. They're able to do it, narrow the road to, you imagine driving through the city streets in Chicago are 10 feet wide. People don't make that turn because they just simply can't. So, and that gives more space to pedestrians and slows cars. All of your comments are very helpful. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Working very pleased. Okay. I'm curious when you mentioned the visual barrier. Oh, they could be. I cannot get into that room. So 3 days ago. Very wall. So a couple from the yeah, the crossing. So there is a crossing here today. The crossing that was from Metro to emergency, and that is enhanced with the flashing beacon, which needs to be very successful. So one of the things that we're recommending is to basically mimic that on the south side of the park. There is a very wide, and it's striped beacon in the middle of the street that can be converted to landscape, and you can have a mid-block crossing very similar to what we have in New York. Since the village controls Green Road here, it's easier. The thing that we're recommending is there is a wall that kind of landscape parking lot here that could be enhanced with loadings. This really is the entry gateway into the community. So we've got this opportunity to landscape. Is that what you guys do that? Well, the small one, and we're crossing. Yeah, I think yeah, so. Yes, sure. So this is, this is a beloved photograph. Okay, this really could be made so much more attractive, and the village is already in is already. bike system really pretty thorough. We can narrow the street here also and make wider with the speed. Multi-path in this area, so that instead of just sidewalk that's fairly narrow and kind of feels like it's right up against the street. You could have a landscape parkway between the sidewalk and the curb and landscaping signage and those. So it really feels like it's part of the downtown. Right now, you kind of feel like you're in the same zone. You just be downtown, but once you get to the trail, it's like you're in a really nice environment. We want to expand the feel of downtown into that. That will also help drive your usage. No. Oh, you can mark this, yes, that would be great, yeah, thanks, yeah. I want more than that. Talk about that. No, what was it?
No.
Okay.
We have not gotten that. But we know that piece of the tracks, there is quite a bit of underutilized park. And so something like the roads, there, they use the park on the east side of the tracks, that might be a golden opportunity. But specifically during those peak times, so that midday peak, when really on street parking is for this. We can utilize the valley systems. Stay down and use the remote parking. We have not gotten into any stuff where that can be located, because probably to your point, you don't want to create a scenario with, clutter or creating traffic congestion or making spaces that are currently. So we have to. But, public outreach. If you were. With the sticker. But I think for everyone. Yeah, there was possibly where it's father and if I like and actually, the next option would be one. I just figured that it makes sense. What if it was and maybe little space. Maybe 16-foot plan, stuff that it's taking up really big parts, already streets. Yeah, it's 16 foot is the standard. I can't predict how big they'll get. It does, it's not an original. Definitely. But it is sort of the standard that you use. The problem with going much bigger is then giving you're sort of wasting the space. There's nothing. We have a lot of fun. This way that we want to actually are fixing that going. And in that one way option, we are with, it's a much wider driveway than we would see in a two-way option. So we would normally more in the two option, but in a one-way option, we do need to leave them more than 10 because they need to be more out. We also need to.
Any other? Yeah.
Yeah. I never park. To come kind of into some downtown. Out of the help of the dog is so bad spaces.
Yeah.
Something kind of coming. So, but I know it could be it's using like car control, cars are parking out, cars. You know, don't park close to the curb, they pull to the curb, it's just fine. It's the parking there, so people are taking out, it's it's hard to get it through both ways, it's perfect. That's a good way for somebody else to pass, that's. That's, I'm aware of, I think, to like, LA parking, it's salaries for time of day. They have LA parking, $1, so it's busy. Pull up and just park, because everybody takes up space, is out of. To go along, that's, you know, yeah, sometimes they able to go parking spaces, let me know, and then it's flashed out. It's just, what you can 5 years, that should be like a 5 minute not stop. So, 2 hours. So I kind of standing on.
I have one. I mean, one stage, which is in any of it. You will see. We have over there, time to make sure.
What would that say, yes to online, like, putting it online, I think we would have at least one more of those teaching sessions, and maybe err on the side of work. One, one noon, one week, whatever. Times. Sorry, it's over.
One other. This helps how. Yes. Yeah, how would that help you? What would? Great question. So, okay, you get the first 2 hours free, but then we start to charge. We start to charge some discriminatory number, really want to get out of there in 2 hours. Or if it's okay, we're going to stay a little longer, but what's the theory? That's something you guys want.
Yeah, in broad sense, we have that.
Okay.
And I think, I'll just say very briefly, the goal is forced turnover. It is not well. The goal is that the parking space for anyone who wants parking space, and the range of those people, if someone doesn't want to pay to someone else willing to pay, and others. So we would want to be very strategic on which spaces we price and what, and the point is just that there's a space there if someone wants it, because if we price others. You know that when you see that. Yeah, actually means people almost. That's concerning.
Feedback points that brought that into the conversation was from the business. Representatives of several businesses said, we think the village should try that, we think that makes sense, we think that can move things along. At least the on-street parking. So we'll do some more research.
Yeah, parking space will be bad. Yeah. The parking lot.
Oh, the parking lot.
Yeah, you get more flow in the parking lot, that's.
So you don't get more spaces than perpendicular. That perpendicular is the variable space. We can get more. Yes, you can go in either direction.
Thank you for the presentation. Here we have. Slowly. Any change. Like. Who lost their mind. We might have like. Let's keep going.
Thank you. We appreciate everybody's time. May I collect the worksheets just so we have come back and take these meetings?
If they haven't done it, we can get them back to you.
Next item on the agenda is all right, we have education would be critical. All the books to
Staff and our design team. We've president, would be affected by this movement. And come up with an alternate. We so look at our showing you screens. Kind of summary of what we're going to figure out. This is kind of a high level, alternative. And so we have some things. Design impacts, shifting the private will create a change in parking. This would actually create a more efficient creation, but in doing so, and shifting that driveway is going to impact the lives.
And what's my
So the image on our left is the existing or proposed current parking configuration. The image on the right is the proposed. So you can kind of see the one on the left. You have kind of an island of parking on the east parking side to the east of the versus the alternate, that island no longer is a narrow conflict and we improve. The point of conflict is just cars driving.
would traffic be slower in the first, in the one where there is more of a circuitous route? And with the slowness at the speed.
The comment on the more efficient parking circulation, that would be a benefit to the clubhouse, because not necessarily. The next value consideration, is the impact that the alternative driveway engines have. And so, comment will be given staff met with the comment representative of changes that need to be made. Scope of work. Another impact would be beautification, so in shifting the driveway, there will be 3 additional that we need to be removed with the alternative driveway location. And to remember through our conversations and clubhouse street are high concern to be the first. We did a determination the tree that have within the amended IGA that we developed the county. We were allowed 20% tolerance to the tree mitigation. So if we needed to remove additional trees up to 20% more, that would be pre-approved in our agreements, and be over 20% will have to go back. If they fall within that 20%, they do not leave us much contingency outside of that. So I would say if there was a tree in question during construction, may or may not fall. The value of the tree is calculated based on the force of the communication matrix, which takes into account the type of the tree, style of the tree, and health of it. And so it's a complex matrix in which it a value. So these 3 additional trees that we would need to shift in the driveway would really limit our.
Two different things. One is how much you have to pay. And the second is whether or not you're allowed to do it all, because you have to get permission. I want to make sure people realize that the 20% has to do with the permission or not permission. Either way, you can. So just because it's quoted in at 20%, it means that during construction of the real thing, of the larger building, you find, whoops, now you have to stop construction and go get permission. You know how fast is that? That's the risk. Yeah, and it's
Another cost. So providing for some certification, we would have to go back consulting and spend a year. We have a 4 to 6 week review time. We will not have an effect for it. We would continue through our current review process, receive our purchase and deal back. We're not. I think much smaller, but if any change, since we've already talked to them, supported contractors, we would have to change them and get them. So while the quantities are relatively the same, we're just driveway, really need to sit down with that to make sure. I think I'm about that, and then this is general. I think that is about high level, obviously, we took some thought into what impacts would be, but this is not.
But the Dudley's open talking about the discussion on safety. I'm. You can drive over a little bit. Makes having travel cars and just in the city.
Really have clear, I mean, safety from that safety capacity in our right way versus the safety within the targets. We've already.
I'm sorry, we need. I'm talking about. Why is it so?
Of that, I think, I don't know if we have the driveway being more clear cost of them, it just feels like it would be bigger. What is in front of that? It's there's no quantifiable ways, right? I mean, there's no engineering approach to necessarily.
Someone's turning. And then someone's across the street. Turning, one or the other. Either way, that worker's coming out of the parking lot or side, it's turning, so he's going fully straight.
Before we get into this, we have neighbors who are here and want to give them a chance to stay there. And then, after for their piece, we can, and don't give them free or no free, but let's hear it. Can we far out to our doctor there? Yes, okay. Yes.
Issue one. One of the ways to increase, like pedestrian access, there's currently no sidewalk. So increasing safety and pedestrian access, one of the three concepts. Is the creation of construction of what's in the side. Pedestrian. This has been on the building radar. Years, it's not something that we've had something today. So right now, we're in a writing implementation, to understand where this will play, the high level community. So we this is yet in the next year. So this, process would be similar to what we're seeing for the green area certain compliance defined. This is a great project, great opportunity to create funding, so we can do that in conjunction with design and then execute. So that is something to see that everyone has agreed it's something. So I just wanted to highlight that. And then I just wanted to again bring up the two alternates and the blue circles are the neighbors. The blue circles are the phase streets. So we want around there. They are existing, and then the yellow is the drive-by from the east driveway into the exit. You can see it shifted from one alternate or from one design to the next. So I know it's kind of hard to see how the design changes. I thought maybe this point of help you visualize the change. So
It's down to.
right here, it's here, it's right here. So that's right here, and this is
Thank you. Thank you, and you don't go anywhere. So, yeah, more neighbors signed up. Unless the neighbors have a different idea, I just go and we're signed up. In 3 minutes to start timing. 3 minutes. Well,
My name is Jody Silver, and I have been a resident for 53 years. Fox State Golf Course, never had an issue. And so they added a parking lot. They made the parking lot larger. My husband and I bought the trees to cover the parking lot. So that's all I know. And one question is, why are we moving the entrance from where it is now? That was my one basic question. Why are we, why are we?
So that's a great question. Do you want to answer?
no, I just don't.
You may want
So I think we can do is make a statement for 3 minutes. If there are questions in it. Another one. So you guys use your 3 minutes to make your points, ask your questions, we can all address.
Okay, we bought the plan. And I don't know why there are other options to have it rather than front. When I saw we saw the first mass, it was right in front of my driveway. In other words, I look out my front yard and I see the parking lot. And I don't think any of you would really like that in front of your house. I mean, it's personal, but I think there are other options that I think we have than having it right in front of someone's yard. That's basically my point that I have. And I agree with everybody on all the points. We all have some good points.
Thank you. Mr. Wade.
So I'm Katie Lay, I live on Wesley Road. I will keep this to my 3 minutes. I think since we've been resident for the past 3 years. Wesley Road is a very unique situation. It is a narrow road. It does not have sidewalks. If you're going to the golf course, it has a natural down slope. We constantly are dealing with people who are speeding, and it's unsafe for children. My kids, they have to walk as they should to the corner to pick up the bus. And we know that this great improvement of the clubhouse is gonna be more traffic, but also gonna be more alcohol use. So there's a natural inherent risk. In an ideal scenario, I think all of us would be really pleased if we could just add a second entrance to the Fairfield South, where the south sign is, it's a natural pass. I think we know for a variety of reasons that's not possible. So the goal to get that second entrance as far east as possible is really important, because then it does help eliminate the traffic that goes down that narrow street with no sidewalks. You've got people who are rushing to make their tea time. You have people who are on the course, not looking at their phones, who are tripping on the course, who are then rushing out. As well, it makes it is an accident waiting to happen. I think with the proposed new second entrance as far eastward, it is not a perfect solution. It is a better solution to where the current second proposed entry is. I realize that this may cost the village some extra money and some extra time, but in the long run, this is an improvement for generations to come. I do not want us to be short-sighted on what is ultimately most important, which is the safety of our residents. I think I heard one of the village board members say earlier today that safety is of utmost importance to him, and I'm sure we can all agree with that. So again, you have a narrow road, with no sidewalks, with people who are already speeding. We used to have a flashing sign that, the speed limit is 25. I saw people clocking 45. I'm out there asking people to slow down. I have teenagers yelling, explicits back to me, telling me to mind my business. It is already a unsafe situation, and with the increased traffic and the straight assets that we are building, there will be more people, and that's what we all want. But we need to make it safe for those who are around us. And so I really politely and considerately urge you to please think about the long terms and moving this eastward. I know it might sound silly for those of you who don't live in the neighborhood to move it, 30, 40 feet, but that distance really makes a huge impact for the few residents who live on Wesley, to make it safer for them and their visitors, because it does decrease the amount of traffic that's in front of us.
My name is Valerie Byron. I live at the very end of Wesley Road. Golf Club. So it doesn't impact me as much as gonna impact these two ladies that just spoke. And I would kindly ask you, drive by and look at these things and realize that this entrance is gonna be exactly in front of your house and your home. A few feet down, there's a wall. It makes a huge difference. I know 160,000 looks like a lot of money, but this is a $50 million project, it's not. And we have a lot of people coming from different communities, and they're gonna benefit from this. But I think we should look at our neighbors and try to do a little bit of understanding how this new plan is gonna impact us. We're excited about the clubhouse. I think it's gonna be great. But to do that little bit for these ladies so that they do not have to exactly see the trucks come in front of their house, I do not think it's a big ask. And again, if you drove by and saw the difference, just moving it down a little bit. I mean, like Katie said, ideally it would have been a stop sign at Fairfield, but since that's not an issue anymore, I really do think we should consider moving it back. Thank you. And my comment, whatever the board like for the new parking lot, I want to be sure that all options consider a drive-through so that Ms. Paley's children is actually picked up in understood is that one of the reasons for the entrance in was so that the school bus can actually go into the parking lot, turn around, come back out and then east on Wesley Road, and then the children are picked up right at their driveway. Other than that.
Thank you. You've got four. Either.
I'm sorry, could I add one?
You want to take them?
I was just gonna say the other thing that I think is a big miss is, like, I have a dog to walk down that street, like with a dog, because there's no sidewalks. I really do believe, as we she presented, that they're looking into it, but I do feel like it's a big miss that we're gonna have so much more traffic and a narrow road and kids and not a.
I will just echo that. I know it's the 3 minutes, but I was under my 3 minutes. I know that Monica and filling team are working in parallel paths to hopefully bring that sidewalk project to life. And again, as part of an ideal solution, it's moving the driveway east and the sidewalk in terms of safety.
One more thing. Just one,
Yeah.
I wonder, what was the basic reason of moving the entrance from where it is now, maybe it down here? I mean, why couldn't we have kept it where it is? I've been there 53 years, there's never been a problem, and
We're gonna walk all. I'm gonna add some additional.
First one that we can is the current. Decision, so, the proposed parking lot does have to. It has a west entrance and exit, and then a new east proposed entrance and exit. We'll have two areas entering exit. And I just want to be clear, it is not one way in and another way out, both are entering and exit. So there is an east exit, or east entrance exit and west. The west one must be maintained, and that is the existing entrances. That must be maintained, because it's critical for the truckers. So one of the design aspects of the consideration was truck deliveries, the future clubhouse, and that is one of the ways in which the trucks will be looking to the parking lot. To make deliveries. Each one primarily for golf patrons, so the open things they modify the data, but that is your most nuisance. This to explain why there are two. Another consideration that we are working is looking at in conjunction with creating pedestrian access. Lastly, is working with the school district. We've had preliminary conversations with the school district. We've worked with our design engineers to show that the school bus can route through the parking lot safely. So this coordinating with them to see if we can.
Just go back a step. I think the question was, why can't we just have one? We always have one, why do we need to have two? So I'd like to just really drill down on why we need two. Why do we need two entrance, why do we need a second entrance exit?
Yeah.
If we've always gotten by with one, is that's your question?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're responsible.
Okay.
there's never been any issues with it.
Yeah, so I mean, we are definitely increasing the frequency of the new house, increasing the parking lots about. With that, we need to take into consideration access. So having one entry and exit, while that's sustained as thus far, this increased occupancy we're seeing from a public safety perspective, how students and residents.
Why for public
I
safety?
would also note that having the second entrance exit addresses one issue. About the rest of the street. They didn't want to address, so we all remain free by having a separate entrance. We're getting rid of some of the traffic, which otherwise
if the airfield is in research. And so with that, we are eliminating. Many can say that.
Monica, is there anything else you want to say or otherwise? Okay, can't secure from residents.
With the original, intention for this second entrance. Recently. Was that chosen just because of the trees and the pole, and it, in order to avoid dealing with them, I'm just wondering how we got them. And understand that the design of the parking lot went through several iterations, all of the express purpose of saving as many trees as possible. As you all recall, the lengthy negotiations that we had with the Forest Preserve District required complete redesign of the parking lot. The segment off to the east was not originally part of the design of the parking lot. We had intended to have parking in that area that Monica is circling. We saved dozens of trees by moving the parking further east. There was always intended to be an entrance in the general area that it was designed today, for many reasons, to avoid the utilities that Monica has talked about, to avoid any additional tree impacts, to limit the overall paved area that we are working with. As we'll all recall, this is not our property. This is Forest Preserve District land. They have been expressed with us as to what their expectations have been. So various different iterations of parking lot design got us to where we are. Where we have, as Monica's talked through, the ability to make modifications within that blue bold line. Which is again where this alternate location has been integrated. So we believe that is, if there's an alternate, this is the alternate. Two entrances and exits to the parking lot is necessary. It actually is a significant improvement to the overall traffic condition on Wesley Road to have the entrance as far east as possible. We recognize that we've wanted to do that for many years. We have not done it because we weren't going to make that investment in the parking lot, so we knew what we were doing with the clubhouse campus overall. So that's it, just to kind of underscore many of those points that Monica's made this evening. That's how we got to this initial parking lot design and the alternate that we're talking.
When the current design parking lot, did that require us to go outside of the prior park?
If you look at the shaded area, that was the boundaries of the former Forest Preserve agreement. The blue area, which encompasses that entire area of the new parking zone, was added as a function of those negotiations. Mainly, again, because we were seeking to keep as much parking within that pink area as possible, but we would have lost dozens of trees to do that. And the Forest Preserve District made it very clear that that was not negotiated. Which is why the blue line exists where it does.
So let me just say, better thing, 30 feet, no big deal, except it turns out 30 feet is potentially thus a huge cost, a bunch of money, which might be money that we otherwise would be able to use in sidewalks about from more. It was put aside. We take out a bunch of money to move the entrance to 30 feet, or maybe not be sidewalk or not be sidewalk. light. And then, the cosmic issue of being up against the line. So that if anything happens, they can shut us down or hold us up. And I don't want, I think we pay something like $350,000 for this construction. With privilege of investing $18 million for the forest conserve in this project. They're not grateful. And they sort of, if we're up against the line, we have to go to them on a firm. Which what I'm hearing is we use up all of our, whatever we have left, and we use it up on this 30-foot project. And we run into a problem, first they're come to us and say, yeah, sorry, you're done. Or they can say, you're done until you change the financial relationship and change the percentage we take. They take folks. So this is very, this is not just that we have to evaluate. You know, how these are very dangerous. It's not.
I have a simple yes or question. Is safety the utmost importance to you or not for your village residents? It's a yes, no question.
Of course, safety is of the utmost importance. I will tell you, I am not persuaded. I am not persuaded that this theory is material difference in safety anybody's. If it was, we would do something. I'm not persuaded of that. I am persuaded that it would be safer if we could put in a sidewalk, which is a very expensive project, for which we will have to, by the way, go back and force their lane. And hope to get some money from them, but we're gonna pay a bunch of them. When I was on the village board 40 years ago, the village used to have a different regime in which residents lived on the street, on the sidewalk, they had to pay them. That was the regime back then. We don't do that anymore. Yeah. The pennies are not. So the answer is yes, safety is important. I'm personally not persuaded that this 30. I'm not persuaded that's a huge safety issue. I think with the change in which hopefully we'll be able to accomplish in the school district, which is got the buses come around, pick up if base address rather than it's walk out to airfield. I think if we have, once we get a sidewalk, that will help. And the cost and red to having a renegotiate, actually get shut down, help up by this. That is not something. Like, for that's what I'm thinking, and I understand.
Is there, I'm gonna ask someone that you've already. So you said there is no engineering to determine. Is there any way here? To others in the room who are not strictly engineers, not looking to the public, but looking to our professionals in this case. Is there any way to determine whether this 30 feet difference? Without that, what are the issues that you're talking about? So current project. So question number one. Question number two. There was all of this suggestion around alcohol intake and mad jumping people leaving the golf clubs all the time. Is there evidence of this? I was not aware, I did not use the Glencoe golf course, golf things, so I would look to, and something not mentioned, I think, but I would. You can tell us, is this, I presume if this were a known thing, we would have public safety and just assume it's a problem, but road waiting from drivers, but. Or there would be some evidence of this stuff, is this a thing? Sure they do, but do they get to lease it and drive home and it's a nuisance?
I can't say, I cannot say that we have a large conference tickets that have been issued because of something like that. We get a more robust report from the public safety records. From the family agency, we can speak to that more directly, so we can get you that information. But there is, this has been an area where we have made some changes in this, right? The stop sign was added at Fairfield and Wesley last year, at the request of the residents. There have been speed signs that have been installed in this area in an effort to help. We have found those speed signs in the locations that they have been placed are useful and helpful, and we are actually in the process of purchasing more of them and continuing to rotate them through problem sites throughout the community. I would say speeding is generally and perhaps to a lesser degree, speeding as distracted driving is a situation that we are working through in a variety of locations. And so that's a high priority enforcement on the public safety department side. So it just, I offer that, like I said, we can get a more robust report relative to tickets issued and things like that. No, this is not our only golf course. This is the only one that's embedded in a residential neighborhood. And so we do work to ensure that people that are coming and going are doing so safely as best as we are able to. Can't be everywhere all the time. That commitment is strong from a public safety firms.
So yeah, each and actually is in theory going to make it better. Now a lot of the cars instead of leaving it Wesley will actually further east of the houses of some of our speakers, across Grover and bullshit. Spitter. So the new parking lot should be better. Is that going to be matched by increase in traffic? I don't know. We're going to look at it. It's hard. The Aspen stop on Dundee Road, Glencoe, there because of the back in the 80s, because I was there's nothing I care about anymore than safety. I think I look at that, I think we're crossing there, it's green, it's done, the road is fast. I have hard time for me. It's actually going to affect the safety. We weigh that against all other real things we have to look about, which includes putting the sidewalk, which we're going to get everything yet. Not carpooling the entire project, which is all getting across for sure. I sort of feel like
The exact measurements from the forest preserve, I mean, it's, when you're doing a project like this, it's not like we're within moving it over within what the forest is, from my understanding from the meeting. This isn't, so like to say, oh, it's butting in, but it doesn't have anything to do with that.
no. The short answer, we have certain, not just the space, but in terms of trees and the like, and if we exceed anything at any point, we have to look back. are going to go back and stuff.
I do want to clarify. What has been, that this alternate design is fully within the area that
Yeah.
we just
But
authorized.
it uses up.
But I just wanted to clarify that, we're not saying we have to ask the permission
No.
to build in that area.
Probably. We would use up. Even if we have, so that if during construction, we have anything else, all of a sudden, we're in trouble. And if negotiating for a service was not easy, it took us 12 years to get this done.
It doesn't, it's 3 trees that are within your 20% variance. So
That is true, but then. And okay, like I said, I understand your point. I'm personally not persuaded of the safety case.
I invite you to my kids' lemonade stand in 2 weeks. Come by, Howard.
If I were active in the neighborhood.
I know you do.
I drive on Wesley every day.
No, no.
Yeah. But
I know you live on Wesley, I mean, on back on the other side of the golf course, but I don't know that you would like the entrance to be right in front of your face all the time. And if it could be moved down a little for safety reasons or every other reasons, I think being afraid to go and ask them 10 years from now for another permit is not a good reason.
that is what I understand the point. It's Lawton Street. I said, I'm not persuaded of the safety case. I understand your point. If you move it a little, move it in front of Winter's house. If we didn't put it in at all, we wouldn't, if we didn't have a second entrance, you wouldn't have to look at it, and worse for the folks for west. You wanted to prevent all traffic going west. I got into this volunteer job, so I wanted to do stuff for our residents. Love to be answered, yes. But in this case, I'm not persuaded to become the case. Yet. I'm just not. Now I can be outvoted, but there's no concrete evidence on safety. I think we're improving the safety, but still. So, anybody else want to weigh in on this? Right. Thank you for coming. I know this is making you happy. I hope you recognize that we heard you. Sorry in this case, but I didn't.
Yeah. We do need direction. If the board is interested in making modifications, these are, as Monica was trying to articulate, not immediate need from the standpoint of the building construction can continue while design will be good. If there is direction, earlier is better from the standpoint of being able to make sure that we can continue the process through MWRD and the county building department, Forest Preserve District, and what seems like a number of other regulatory agencies. So it isn't necessarily voting to allocate the resources, but definitely if there's direction for staff, that's what we, one of the reasons we're here. One of the critical elements from the standpoint of the tree. How much could we delay? How far could we delay this decision about where that entrance goes? to delay it enough so that we couldn't gain certainties that under the meetings we had the players in a contingency. So that we like, okay, we know we're pretty comfortable and they have to go ahead and get it. But of course, the business.
Well, to some degree, it comes into play as you look at the site plan. It's things like the circle drive near the new clubhouse, and the numbers of trees that are kind of in construction zone. That we're somewhat anxious about in the medium and long term. They're not. They're there. We think they can be protected. The Forest Reserve District staff is working with our team to make sure that they can be. We will have, I mean, some of that excavation work is likely to begin somewhat soon. So, you know, I do think there's a window of time where we might be able to get a better handle. I think the question does become, with respect to the NWRD, if you know, if we're kind of dialed in and tied up with a approval permit going back, the longer out that we go back with risk how quickly we respond.
Redesign and coordinate. And again, this was in a high level, so my comment is that this is not impact all construction schedule, we're kind of related to making a decision to be very immediate on how to proceed. I mean, I think there are other contingencies that we're talking about in dollar wise, the timeline, and one of those coordinating on that embedded process in and of itself to go through their business process. All of those things in my mind, is going to take the longer we can make this decision, the more impacts, the more unknown impacts. I think to your point, when we see how progression or how construction progresses, I think how our people are doing, that there's a risk.
One question about the trees specifically, so. Having like most people on construction on my property, you know, things, which I think is sort of what you're getting at. So, you know, what happens if one of our construction vehicles, you know, something else, rams into a tree, it's lost in the process, now we're down one more tree that we can plant, so we're into that 20% outside of our control, so that seems obvious to me, but like, are there construction accidents fine, but are there specific, you know, trees that are particularly vulnerable in this project? And we are going to be responsible, for example, if their root structure is damaged and the tree dies, then we've gone into our 20%, but we can't control for that until we're doing. Is that the sort of thing you're getting at?
Yes, and I think if we directly possibly, we have extensive tree protection up already to protect anybody from mixing with that huge for trees, but we are going through extensive measures to protect trees that are on the construction site. So we know that they're at risk, they're going to be protected during construction.
And that was 20% actually seems for a project of this size.
And then strict liability. We got one of these goes. It's our problem. You use up, you have to move back out and first we all know it.
And that's part of our continuation
level scheduling.
We want permission to sign one with the code, like, they all the way to, yeah.
that is the high level scope. To create that connectivity that we're looking for. Patient, community travel.
Obviously, no way to walk for the kids. I gotta walk up the school, I do no way to walk. Get a lot more cars and traffic, clubhouses going, and people are hanging on the golf course for that. After cocktails afterwards, I think it's not going to be really operating.
Question. Do we have any opportunities for alcohol? Excuse me, do we have any opportunities for alcohol off-site mitigation? I don't know how much right away we have, but it's possible to provide street trees, for instance, on the south side and a walkway on the south side. South side. That addresses some travel issues with children and also amping up the tree canopy south side in the public right of way. You can add some trees and provide kind of buffer with things.
As far as. I don't know if this is a
Mm-hmm.
very much.
Right of way.
Yeah. But for us.
It's a possibility, a possible enhancement.
Go back to trustee Ruben's question. Is there information that you would like us to solidify that would? Is that, you were talking about delay, what other information you all need if that would be the case? I just want to make sure. Well, number one, the easy point is it's steady. No one's arguing about this stuff. Point made. I'm trying to figure out. I'm thinking about the traffic flow and having cars move. Again, it's literally 30 feet. Oh. Okay. So, well, no, listen, talking about specifics and how many trees, how many days of in with the forest preserve. So, okay, so 60 feet, all right. So you've got, but the traffic, so I guess you could have more exiting traffic on the south side of the street heading eastbound. Like during that 60 feet, you otherwise wouldn't have had if they exited from the eastbound left. Then they just never, those cars just didn't. So it would reduce the traffic for that 60 feet. In terms of the kids, I think the biggest safety feature I heard today is the fact that on either plan will be able, hopefully, with the cooperation of the people that normally sit there, the school district, that will be able to get buses to stop at drive-ins, residents to pick people up there in front of the, so they're not walking in. And I think, and then I guess if there was a sidewalk on when, I think based on this discussion, in my mind, when there is this, it's something sooner than later, that should resolve a lot of it because the people would decide to walk across the street and say, walk to the sidewalk. It doesn't matter if cars go.
So I think we made it safe. We're going to find out the extent to which the use change, the change to the pay, have made it safer. But the board is committed to doing everything we can, doing a sidewalk height, and probably sidewalk height west of the road. South side of the street, I don't know what to get. South side.
There is east of both owners.
There's. East of both ones could go. There's a sidewalk. Already, so. Anything you want north side. Is But because it's work.
Well, it is something that we've already begun conversations with the district on. I think there are shared values that tie into walking trails and pathways. It may not be on the, if it's on the north side, it wouldn't likely be a traditional concrete 5-foot wide sidewalk. It would be a meandering path or something. Those are things that we still have to kind of nail down from an experience standpoint. I would just underscore, we're doing that, right? We're gonna bring you recommendations, probably with the next budget, later this year. On how to begin to look at how we may fund some. That's something that we're already kind of in process. The question that I just want to make sure that we are leaving this where everybody wants it to be. The president mentioned maintaining the design of the parking lot as it is today. From staff standpoint, I want to make sure that the consensus.
I think it is. I think it is. We're not going anywhere. So. Nothing will happen. They were simply counting on us to see if it gets to change our mind, but I think this is the right decision for us. Thank you. So, next item on the agenda is a staff report and update regarding low speed electric scooters and e-bikes.
So we're going to try to move through this somewhat quickly. This is really just a staff update on an ongoing new issue that is continuing to kind of evolve with the community. Deputy Chief clearly is on Zoom and is going to kind of walk through a few slides. Really what tonight is to kind of give you a real high level overview, and as we get to the end of Andy's presentation, get any feedback that you may have as to potential future next steps on a local level. So, Andy, are you hanging in there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Sure. Yeah.
Hopefully you can hear me. You guys are cutting in and out a little bit, but electric scooters and electric bikes have been rapidly gaining in popularity, particularly among students and younger residents within the village. So as Phil mentioned, we want to provide the board with a review of the current legal framework and information.
Andy, hold on.
Try that.
How about now? Is this better now?
Not much.
Not much.
All right, so we're gonna have to let them this. I was gonna get time to go. We'll kind of jump ahead. Andy, the presentation. Well, I'm sorry. This is a subject that really has kind of come into light in the last months. As you can see, a state statute changed late last year that became effective January 1 of this year. We go to the next slide, please. And it back. There you go. Stop. Stop. These are, you have seen these proliferation of what are known as low speed electric scooters. Through our community throughout the North Shore, this has been kind of an evolving issue. The conversation hasn't been too strong here in Glencoe. Definitely has been in other parts of the North Shore in years past, but it's become more of a focus in the last year or so. Again, these are new restrictions, and I think the one that is the most interesting, or perhaps complex, is that it essentially, by statute, dictates that operators of these scooters must be 18 years or older. And what we have seen throughout the community is that a lot of users of these scooters are lacking years than that. This has caused some questions, some concern about the safety of those riders, their ability to safely use scooters, because of quick they move, and how they are used and where. So on sidewalks, on public streets, things of that nature. And I'd like to get, we're gonna jump ahead of the electric bikes. Go to the next one, please. There's one more, please. Thank you. So, what we have undertaken in this community over the last 6 or so months is a pretty comprehensive outreach and information sharing plan throughout the community. So we have in particular tied up a strong partnership with District 35 in sharing the information about these scooters, about who should be using them, how they should be used, and importantly, who shouldn't be using them. And so public safety has taken a pretty active role. There have been information blasts shared with parents, handouts that are going to take to handlebars of these things as they've been parked outside of our schools, and face-to-face discussions between our officers and kids throughout the community. Generally, those efforts have been a primary focus, but there's been a lot of regional discussion. And those discussions are taking place among police chiefs along the North Shore. We've been focused on that along with our village attorneys on understanding the statute. And what we're starting to see is that a number of our North Shore neighbors are beginning the process of implementing a variety of local ordinance modifications to address how e-scooters are used, how e-bikes are used in their community. So we just one more. Deerfield is really the first community in our immediate region to have enacted a local ordinance with their own specific set of local restrictions. There's a series of those restrictions that have really sought to, rather than ticket a child who is using these, to tie back any sort of ticket to the parent, and a dialogue along those lines of sharing information with those parents about how these are being used and a safe way to do so. That local ordinance, and Steve will know the exact date, I feel like it was enacted back in April, with a 90-day window where they will come back at the end of the summer and assess whether they want to make some modifications to those local ordinances, those local restrictions. Island Park, as I understand, enacted two nights ago. Northbrook is considering one in July. All very similar structural ordinances. Anecdotally, one of the conversations that Director Locker had with some of his colleagues, particularly the police chief in Deerfield, was around the area of compliance. And what has to some degree surprised them in Deerfield is how much compliance they have been able to enact through this ordinance. And they are, it isn't a situation where they are chasing in a squad car or anything like that. These are face-to-face interactions with kids. When police is talking to them, they get on the phone with the parent and talk to the parent about those rules and regulations, those local rules and regulations, particularly in there, they're seeing very high compliance rates tied back to that. So that was something that's new information that we just really ascertained this week. But again, there are a number of communities in our immediate area that are enacting these types of local ordinances. Those Lake Forest, Glen Allen, Evanston, and Wilmette all are looking at possible ordinance modifications. Lake Forest has a few related to their central business district already. So why we're even bringing this up to you is given the fact that this is an ongoing and kind of regular concern among some parents, we have gotten a number of complaints from people throughout the community that they're concerned about the safety of kids that are riding these scooters at speed that are pretty dramatic. Whether the board was interested in staff evaluating these other local ordinances and perhaps bringing a draft back to you next month for you to talk about, think about, consider whether we want to implement something locally. So that's why I just wanted to get that out on the table, because we want to be able to start working on that if we want us.
Deerfield got this 90-day thing for the. Should we consider it our. I don't know, Northbrook also, the 90-day thing, or it is.
Deerfield did it, it was the first, and it actually had very, very contentious initial hearing on it. Then it adopted a compromise, which lowered the age 16 for everything other than the low speed scooters that's governed by the state. And it eliminated all of the concern, truly eliminated the concern and achieved. Highland Park and Northbrook modeled afterwards, now that you're really compromise. So I don't see here fully excusing. They built in the 90 days, but Highland Park adopted it without. Highland Park went a step further on the floor and added a provision that prohibits the use on any public property, including park district and school property, so there and any publicly accessible private property, the city has enforcement. Parking lots where the city enforces on large parking lots like the metro lot. It actually now goes a step further than here.
Well, we should. Yeah, let's look at it.
It's an ongoing concern. There's some pretty serious accidents. 2 months.
The important thing is to get it off the sidewalk.
Yes.
So we actually have a request for public comment.
It was a very lengthy document, but what exactly? It prohibits the use of what they now call a motor driven vehicle. They define that very carefully, because it includes all sorts of powered bicycles.
Steve, I have their summary up on for the okay. So I can walk through that. Motor driven vehicles are defined as electric scooters, motor driven cycles under 107 meters, mopeds, things of that nature. If you are using one, you must be 16 years older and have a valid driver's license. Low speed electric scooters are 18 and older with valid driver's license in compliance with state law. You cannot use them on sidewalks, bike paths, public property, and parking lots. All riders must obey traffic laws and rules of the road. No more than one person in each of these vehicles. A person under age 16, if they're accompanied by a parent or guardian, is allowed to use one. Toy vehicles are defined separately, so think of like a power wheels or something like that. And then mobility devices for people with disabilities are exempted from this. The parents are responsible for ensuring that their child is complying with these restrictions. Fines would be are levied against parents potentially, and those fines start at $100. So that's just a brief summary of what you're considering.
We're not doing anything, we're gonna look at. And we're gonna come up with our thing.
What we'll do is we'll bring you back a draft ordinance that will committee a whole and July, and we can talk about
thank you, everyone. Our next meeting starts at 7, which is already happening. So why don't we take a couple of minutes and then we'll start the next. Make sure